Hey, how's it going? It's me, Rebecca. Welcome back to my channel, The Lazy Bookworm. In this video, I'm going to do a wrap up of the books I read in August. September is upon us. I think by the time this video comes out, it will be September. For me in New Zealand, that means the beginning of spring, and for you folks in the Northern Hemisphere, it will mean the beginning of autumn. It also will mean that it is nearly Christmas. I think only about 2.5 months, I think. And the end of the year, which is quite freaky to me because I feel like, where's the year gone? August was a good reading month. I didn't think it would be because I was celebrating my birthday in August. August the 19th to be specific. So I had and also I have quite a few friends who celebrate their birthdays in August as well. So I had quite a few events to go to. But I actually got quite a lot done. And some of it was thanks to the good old audiobook. I finally finished Middlemarch in August. I am so happy I did. I actually finished about, I think, a week ago. So proud of myself. It is a chunky book. It is over 900 pages. And the thing is, I started this in September and I was really enthusiastic, really keen, and I really liked it. And then just different things happened and I got caught up reading other books, and I started reading less and less of this. So that is why I really wanted to finish this in August. I was about 3/4 and I thought, come on, just finish the last bit. So I will probably give a more detailed summary of Middlemarch and my feelings around it. All I will say now is that I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to reading another George Eliot novel. The second book I read, just want to put the caveat, these are in no particular order of being read, they're just all random, is Tete Michel Kpomassie's Michel the Giant, an African in Greenland. I'm very sorry if I pronounced particularly his surname wrong. This was a really interesting book. I'd never heard of the story. This is a non-fiction book, and it is about this young man from Togo in Africa who, when he was a kid, found a book about Greenland and Eskimos, and it so intrigued him that when he was grown up, he spent about about 8 years, maybe even a bit more. It was years. The second book I read is a non-fiction book, and it is Michel the Giant, an African in Greenland by Tete Michel Kpomassie. Apologies if I pronounced this wrong. This book I found really interesting, and I remember when I picked it up, I was really intrigued by it. It is the true story about the author who, when he was a little boy, found a book about Greenland, and he was so intrigued by it that when he was older, when he grew up, he decided to go and travel to Greenland. Now, the only problem with that was he lived in Togo, which is in Africa. So he recounts sort of in the first part of the book how he went from Togo to France. I think he spent some time in Scandinavia and finally in Greenland. And the rest of the book encounters his life in Greenland. I'd never heard of the story, and it was a really great story about a person who really sort of went out of their comfort zone. Like, if you could imagine almost any place more opposite than Africa, it probably would be somewhere like Greenland. It was really interesting to hear sort of his journey, and he talks a lot about the people he met. I mean, he talked about places, but I really felt it was also a people book, and then he talked about the different people, whether it be in Africa or in France or in Greenland, and his sort of interactions with them. I also learned quite a bit about Greenland. I have to admit, it was a place I didn't know that much about. I would really recommend this book if you love travel stories, because this is a very unique travel story from a unique perspective. The third book is also a non-fiction, and it is Elaine Brown's A Taste of Power, A Black Woman's Story. This is a non-fiction book. This is an autobiography of Elaine Brown, who was the first woman leader of the Black Panther Party in 1974. And this is sort of her journey from when she was a child growing up, I think it was child growing up in Philadelphia, to her time in Los Angeles, and then her joining the Black Panther movement and becoming a sort of figure in that. I would definitely recommend this if you're into Black history or even American history, definitely. Or even just like women's history. The next book is actually not a book, it's actually a short story by Alexander Pushkin, which I listened to via audiobook, and that is The Queen of Spades. At first, I found it a little bit boring. I was like, what is this? What's this about? It's basically about chess and how this woman, this sort of elderly woman, holds the secret that this young man really, really wants to get his hands on. But I actually really enjoyed it. In fact, I actually really would like to actually read it, either through an ebook or a physical book. The second audiobook I listened to was First Love by Ivan Turgenev. I'm not quite sure what it was, last month or the month before. I read Father and Sons by Turgenev, and I really enjoyed that. So I thought I would give First Love a try. I think it's maybe one of his most well-known stories. It's a shorter story. It's probably a bit of a novella. It all starts off with a group of gentlemen who ask each other, who was your first love and what are the circumstances? And, each of them, gives the others their story. But one of them actually says, like, I cannot give you my story, but I will write it for you. And that's what he does. He writes it down and he gives it to them. And that first love is the story. And it is basically about this young man who falls in love with an older woman. And sort of all the repercussions of that. I have to say, I think I enjoyed Father and Sons better, but this was an enjoyable book. I did like it. I really could kind of get that sort of emotional roller coaster you get when you fall in love, and especially when it's like your first love. The next book was also an audiobook, and it's also by a Russian, and that is Oblomov by Ivan Goncharov. Basically, it is about this man, Oblomov, who, let's just say, leads a very sedentary lifestyle. And in particular about his relationship with this one woman and his childhood friend. I actually liked it. Still when I was getting into it, I was like, that's alright, but, But actually, as it started to pick up, it actually got really, really good. I would recommend Oblomov, and like with Pushkin's Queen of Spades, I actually would be interested actually reading it rather than just listening to it on audiobook. The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. I did a full-fledged video where I reviewed and shared my thoughts on this book, and hopefully the card will be listed somewhere around here. The next book was The Tenant of Wildfell, along with Middlemarch. I remember I said in my August TBR video, The Tenant of Wildfell was one I wanted to finish, and I did. In laws, it's quite apt that I list is just after the five, because both books, even though they're very different, like for one thing, the five is non-fiction and the Ten of Wildfell Hall is fiction. And mean they deal with a similar theme in that they deal with the plight of women in 19th century Victorian England, and how for women especially, if your life didn't go exactly how you plan, like for example, you had an abusive husband, or you or something like that, you were kind of stuffed. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is basically about this woman who has a disastrous marriage to this man, and she leaves him with her son and goes and resides in Wildfell Hall. And actually, that is where the book begins. She is a new tenant there. She's so mysterious, no one really knows much about her. And this man, Gilbert Markham, gets to know her, and eventually she actually sort of lets him into her confidence, and she gives him her diary, where he proceeds to find out about her life, and in particular her horrible, disastrous marriage. Reading the section where it was like about her marriage to her husband was quite rough for me. He really was a jerk, let's just say. I probably would say something a bit more unkind, but I don't want to get censored by YouTube. But let's just say he was a real jerk. And, I just sort of think it's so hard for women to escape abusive marriages nowadays in the 21st century. And it would have been so difficult, probably even impossible in many cases, back in the 19th century. I actually really enjoyed it. I know Anne Bronte is a little bit the lesser known of the Bronte sisters compared to Emily and Charlotte. I've not read anything by Charlotte, but I have to say, I think I like the Ten of Wildfell Hall better than I liked Wuthering Heights. Maybe because Wuthering Heights is quite gothic. Don't think I'm really into the gothic fiction that much. Never say never, but I don't think it's the sort of genre that I'm that crazy on. Whereas the Ten of Wildfell Hall is sort of done in a more realistic style. The next book is Last Stories by William Trevor. I read William Trevor's, is it The Story of Lucy Gold? Or The Ballad of Lucy Gold? I think it's The Story of Lucy Gold. And I enjoyed that. So when I saw his collection of short stories, which was his last collection, I thought I would give it a go. I have to say, I actually can't remember many of the short stories. I'm sorry. And they were good to read. It's not like I didn't enjoy reading them or I hated them. It just, for some reason, they just haven't really stuck in my head. Lastly, is the Ottomans. I was talking about chunky books with Middlemarch. This was a chunky book. This was about like this thick. And it's by Marc David Baer. And it is all about the Ottomans and the Ottoman Empire. From its beginnings to its sort of conquest of Byzantium through the sort of 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, and to sort of the 19th century, where sort of modern ideas start to kind of come into the empire, so to speak, and then on to the 20th century, where they had a disastrous First World War and the eventual breakup and dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. Got this book because I actually saw a Netflix kind of docudrama series called The Ottomans, which was about I don't know if he was the first Ottoman ruler. No, he wasn't the first Ottoman ruler, but I can't remember his name, but he was the Ottoman ruler that conquered Byzantium, which he conquered what is now known as Istanbul. So, yeah, So I kind of got intrigued by that, and I got this book out. As I said, it is a chunky book, so that is a huge warning. I really enjoyed this. It was very, very thorough. It did talk a lot about sort of courtly life, about sort of what was going on sort of in kind of Istanbul, modern day Turkey. I felt it didn't really talk a lot about, the sort of the rest of the empire. And, there's a full like kind of cast of characters and people that were focused on in this book. And you love sort of Middle Eastern history and just sort of even it's a little bit like kind of history of empires and that. I think you really would enjoy it. The second to last book is also non-fiction. It is my last non-fiction, and is Manifesto by Bernadine Everisto. As I told you last month, I read her book Mr. Loverman, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of my top books of the year. Maybe one of my top books of all time. I don't know, but it's definitely one of the top books of this year. And so I saw this in the library, and I thought I would give it a go. It's a non-fiction. It's not fiction. It's non-fiction, and it's basically about her life. It's sort of like an autobiography, really. I'm not really into autobiographies and biographies that much. I don't know why, just not really into them. But this was actually really, very, very funny. Very insightful, and it's very kind of loving in a way, loving towards herself, towards her family, towards the people she met. And yeah, it just really traces her experience as a mixed race woman in England in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and up until today. I think it finishes kind of around when she wins the Booker Prize for Girl, Woman, Other. The last book is Alexandre Dumas' The Black Tulip, which is actually, I think, the first book I completed in August. I really enjoyed this book. It's basically set in Holland during Tulip Mania, which was, I think, in the 17th century, in the 1600s, 17th century. I get mixed up. Anyway, and it is about this young man whose godfather has been hanged along with his brother by the state. And so this young man is sort of in the country, and he knew what happened, but he was not involved. He was not, and he was growing this black tulip. And yes, and it's supposed to be that, this tulip is a rare find, and it is all about this young man's adventures with this black tulip. It is about how he is falsely imprisoned, how he is helped out by the warden's daughter, how he gets his black tulip stolen, but how in the end it resolves itself. It's a really good sort of adventure book. And so I really, really enjoyed it. This is my second Dumas. It's the first one I read was Count of Monte Cristo, and then The Black Tulip. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading probably his most famous work, The Three Musketeers. So, yep, I really like that book. So, it's been a very long video, and my throat is a bit sore. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you had a good August, both reading-wise and otherwise. And I will see you in the next